Coming up on Network Africa, the International Court of Justice orders Israel to take measures to prevent active genocide in Gaza after South Africa accused Israel of violating the Genocide Convention. Kenya's High Court blocks government's deployment of police officers to fight gangs in Haiti. Plus, Zimbabwe's opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, quits from his CCC party, alleging hijack from the government. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. We'll begin with the International Court of Justice ruling in The Hague, ordering Israel to prevent acts of genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza and to do more to help civilians. In a sweeping ruling, a large majority of the 17-judge panel of the ICJ voted 15-2 for urgent measures which covered most of what South Africa requested, with the notable exception of ordering a ceasefire to Israeli military action in Gaza. While the ICJ did not order a ceasefire, it said it would not throw out the genocide case, ruling that the Palestinians appear to be a protected group under the 1948 Genocide Convention. South Africa brought the case to the International Court of Justice, ICJ, earlier this month, asking it to grant emergency measures to halt the fighting, which has killed more than 26,000 Palestinians. Reacting to the ICJ judgment, South Africa calls the ruling a decisive victory, while Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says Israel will continue to defend itself and citizens while adhering to international law.
In the court's view, at least some of the acts and omissions alleged by South Africa to have been committed by Israel in Gaza appear to be capable of falling within the provisions of the convention. In light of the following, the court concludes that, prima facie, it has jurisdiction pursuant to Article 9 of the convention to entertain the case. Given this conclusion, the court considers that it cannot accede to Israel's request that the case be removed from the general list. I shall now read out the operative part of the order. For these reasons, the court indicates the following provisional measures. 1. By 15 votes to 2, the State of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in relation to the Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention, in particular, A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group.
Well, Israel's national carrier El Al says it will suspend flights to Johannesburg from March due to what it says is a drop in demand in the wake of South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. El Al currently has up to 2 non-stop flights to Johannesburg a week, but spokesperson for the airline says Israelis don't want to fly to South Africa, cancelling flights and leaving the planes empty. The company also cites the current security situation as a reason. El Al said in a statement that due to the current crisis, there has been a significant decrease in demand among Israeli travelers to various destinations, including Johannesburg in South Africa. And in light of this, starting at the end of March 2024, the Johannesburg-Tel Aviv line will be suspended. Residents in Gaza are seeking safety along the borders with Egypt amid the ongoing conflicts between the Israel Defense Forces and Hamas in Khan Yunis. Thousands of tents line the border area where locals grappling with difficult conditions gather near the modest shelters. The situation has led to a significant number of people erecting tents in the area as they confront limited options for refuge. Compounding the challenges faced by these displaced Palestinians, many of whom have been uprooted multiple times, is the worsening living conditions and a scarcity of aid. We'll continue with our headline story for today, the International Court of Justice ruling at The Hague. Let's discuss this now. Joining us is Charles Adeogun Phillips, a former ICC prosecutor. Thank you so much for your time on the program. I want us to begin with your thoughts on, the ruling earlier today.
I think the ruling is, good afternoon. I think the ruling is indeed very, very, very significant. And it's significant to the extent that it is indicative of the fact that the ICJ accepts that there is a real and imminent risk of irreparable prejudice, which will be caused if the rights contained in the Genocide Convention are not upheld before it gives its final decision on the merits. So even though the standard of proof for requests for provisional measures is indeed very low, all you need to show is the existence of the likelihood, the prima facie likelihood of irreparable harm. The ruling itself is significant in the sense that it distinguishes the crime of genocide from any other international crime, in the sense that the requirement for the existence of the special intent for genocide, what we call the dolus specialis, has to be present. And that special intent is the intent to destroy in whole or in part members of a group based on racial or religious grounds. So in essence, what this ruling shows is that the court accepts that the public comments made by very high-ranking public office holders in Israel were sufficient enough for it to infer or conclude that those comments may constitute a direct and public incitement to genocide or to the genocide of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza. So that in itself is very significant.
All right. Now, hinging on, the genocide case, the ICJ, we see that it did not order a ceasefire, but it also said it would not throw out the genocide case. So should we be expecting a ruling on that, perhaps later on?
Well, provisional measures are what we often describe as interim measures to preserve the status quo, as it were. And that's what these measures are designed to do, to basically preserve the status quo where there's a likelihood of irreparable harm. In so doing, it would seem from the judgment that the court recognizes Israel's right to self-defense under international law. And as a consequence thereof, it has in fact refrained from ordering a ceasefire in this situation. Now, the case on the merits is still about a year or two away, but these provisional measures are just designed to forestall any further irreparable harm based on the alleged breaches of the Genocide Convention.
We also understand that, this ruling is not binding. So how is the ruling expected to be adhered to?
Actually, that's not correct. The ruling is actually binding on the parties. And that was indicated in the Legrand brothers' judgment at the ICJ in June 2001. The court found that the basic function of the ICJ is the judicial settlement of international disputes. Therefore, interim measures or interim provisional measures ordered by the court are indeed binding on the parties. The Legrand case, as you would remember, was a case brought by the government of Germany against the United States government before the court, and it concerned violations of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. In that case, the ICJ ruled that the provisional measures were legally binding and the rights contained in the Vienna Convention could not be denied based on an application of domestic legal procedures. So going back to this scenario, those orders given today are indeed binding on the State of Israel.
All right, then. Thank you so much. Charles Adeogun Phillips, the former International Criminal Court prosecutor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, a day before the 79th commemoration of the Holocaust in Israel, a non-governmental organization has called for countries not to distort history of the horrific event. Executive Director at I Stand With Israel International, Rex Ajenifuja, says nations must learn about Israel's past to understand some of its present actions. He also describes the war with Hamas as a regular war with a different dimension. Israeli filmmaker in Nigeria, Ronya Man, who was a special guest at the event in Lagos, says people need to understand the distinction between Holocaust and genocide, a word recently used to describe the Israeli war in Gaza.
So genocide is a word that's been used quite a lot recently. It is meant the killing, the mass killing of a certain race with the intent of exterminating that race, that ethnic group. Whereas Holocaust is a Greek word for burnt people or a mass burning of people. Which is why specifically the genocide of the Jews in 1935 to 1945 World War II is called the Holocaust because they used burning to exterminate the Jews, to commit genocide on the Jews.
There's no way you can relate with Israel without relating with our Israel, without relating with our history. And the history of Israel is not complete without the history of Holocaust. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, we seem to forget about the past, or we seem to play as if there was no past. So Israel that you're seeing today, you are seeing them today, or the way they are behaving today was as a result of what they have experienced in the past. Fortunately, the war against Hamas is just the regular war, but taking a new dimension. So it relates today because if you look at what is happening in Gaza today, nobody will ever believe, even Israeli Defense Force, their intelligence were beaten. They never thought that such a thing could happen to them in this dispensation, in this 21st century, where knowledge, technology is so advanced.
Well, dozens of pro-Palestine activists have demonstrated outside Nairobi's German embassy against German financial support to Israel and also to demand a ceasefire in Gaza amid the ongoing war. It, however, turned chaotic as police fired tear gas to disperse the crowd of protesters, and others were arrested and placed into police vans. Some protesters were carrying banners reading, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and free, free Palestine."
We are here to protest. We were going to go outside the German embassy to protest the German financial and military support to the apartheid Israeli state, which is currently conducting a genocide against the Palestinian people, and it has been for the past 75 years. That is why we're out here.
I'm here to support the Palestinian cause, to remind everyone that the ongoing current genocide in Palestine is being funded and supported by the German government as well as the American government and many other governments across the world, and this needs to stop now. Ceasefire now.
Still ahead on the program, we join a Nigerian lady, Pelumi Nubi, on a 2-month solo trip from London, United Kingdom, all the way to Lagos, Nigeria. More details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. The Kenyan High Court has blocked the government from deploying police officers to fight gangs in Haiti. The judge argues that the deployment would be illegal as the National Security Council lacks the legal authority to send police outside of Kenya, adding that the council can only deploy armed forces for peacekeeping missions such as Haiti. The judge further explains that Kenyan law only allows the government to deploy police officers to another country if a reciprocal agreement exists between Kenya and that host country. Well, last year, Kenya had volunteered to lead a multinational security force in Haiti to quell gang violence after Haitian authorities had asked the UN to urgently deploy a police force. Well, the UN Security Council backed Kenya's offer to lead the force, and Kenyan lawmakers also approved the deployment. Mali's military rulers have announced the cancellation of a 2015 peace deal with separatist rebels after months of fighting in the West African nation. Military authorities said late on Thursday that the Algiers Accord had ended with immediate effect due to other signatories not keeping their commitments and also alleged hostility by chief mediator Algeria. In a speech broadcast on state television, the military government spokesperson Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga said there had been an increasing number of unfriendly acts, instances of hostility and interference in Mali's internal affairs by Algeria. Algeria had led efforts to restore peace to Mali after the signing of a so-called Algiers Accord between Bamako and armed groups predominantly made up of the semi-nomadic Tuareg ethnic group. Last month, Mali summoned the Algerian ambassador over interference and unfriendly acts related to claims the envoy held talks with Tuareg separatists without involving the government in Bamako. Zimbabwe's opposition leader Nelson Chamisa has resigned, saying his party has been contaminated and hijacked by the government. In his resignation letter, he says the CCC party had been defiled, accusing the ruling ZANU-PF party of being behind the move. Mr. Chamisa, a 45-year-old Christian pastor and lawyer, is expected to set up a new party because he says he's not given up or given in. It's also not clear how many of the CCC's remaining members of parliament and councillors that could follow him. He was previously the leader of another party, the MDC, which he left after a power struggle before going on to establish the CCC in 2022. The flood situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo remains dire as nearly half of the country's 26 provinces are being impacted by severe flooding, including the capital, Kinshasa. Now, this is according to UN spokesperson Stephen Dujarric, who was speaking to reporters in New York. He adds that Congolese authorities are reporting the need for emergency assistance in at least 400,000 households.
Flood situation remains dire, with nearly half of the country's 26 provinces being impacted by severe flooding. That includes the capital, Kinshasa. According to the Congolese authorities, more than 400,000 households need emergency assistance, including food, shelter, and healthcare support. The humanitarian coordinator in that country, Bruno Le Marquis, visited affected communities in Kinshasa and expressed deep concern over the precarious living conditions in these areas. Some families live in their flooded houses, increasing the risk, of course, of waterborne diseases, which could potentially overwhelm an already strained healthcare system. And in the east of the DRC, peacekeeping colleagues are continuing to protect the main supply route leading towards Goma and Sake, that's in North Kivu. They're also assisting the Congolese army to prevent the M23 armed group from advancing towards both Sake and Goma. Peacekeepers and Congolese armed forces are deployed in Maisi, Rutshuru, and Nyiragongo, patrolling key areas. As we mentioned before, the mission established a security perimeter near its Kinshanga base to help protect some 25,000 men, women, and children who are seeking shelter due to the prevailing insecurity we've been telling you about. The presence of peacekeepers also enables the delivery of humanitarian assistance to those who need it.
And finally, on the program, Nigerian globetrotter Pelumi Nubi has begun a daring 2-month solo trip from London to Lagos. She departed England on Wednesday, crossing into France, and is now en route to Spain, then Morocco. Her journey will take her through the West Sahara Desert, Mauritania, and finally into West Africa through Senegal. Prior to embarking on this thrilling adventure, we had the opportunity to catch up with her and learn about the motivation that's driving her. Our London correspondent, Teniola Oyetayo, reports.
A direct flight from London to Lagos takes only around 6.5 hours. However, for Pelumi Nubi, this journey will be an extraordinary 2-month solo road trip by car. This Peugeot 107 has been customized for her journeys, featuring provisions for sleeping and dining. So when you open up the back bit, this has been replaced with a plank of wood, and you have the tap area, which also is connected to like a water tank, so I can do like my washing up, cooking happens here. I have a gas cooker right there, and then we have the sleeping area on this side. Preparations for the extensive expedition across Europe to West Africa have been meticulous, with safety being a top priority. I have done about a year preparation for this trip, whereby I've been able to speak to other people that have done similar trips. I've been able to kind of a lot of in-depth research to see what are the policies like, how I'll be able to cross, cost of it, the safest route. Again, I'm doing this solo, so I just have to make sure I'm, quite responsible in that way. Mentally, it's just kind of hyping myself, really. Sometimes I'm frightened, but most days I'm just like, this is doable, this is possible, and really that's the message I want to convey. The 29-year-old globetrotter has already explored over 80 countries and undertaken several mini solo road trips, but this particular adventure stands out from the rest. This is very daring in comparison to others. I've definitely done many, trials. This is longer in duration, more expensive in terms of the cost of what it entails as a whole, and really just kind of really daring, stepping out of my comfort zone compared to the other ones I've done in the past. I am traveling through 2 different continents, so that's another difference in compared to the other travels I've done previously. It's not just a drive. I really did want to experience each and every destination that I stop in. The total is about 17 countries, whereby I'm able to explore the whole, some of the European countries, then cross into Morocco, and just keep making my way down west of Africa. Her aspiration is to not only showcase Africa, but also serve as an inspiration for young Black girls and to motivate others to break out of their comfort zones. Honestly, I just wanted to show that this kind of travel was very possible for someone that looks like me, and really inspiring the next generation of travelers that they can step out of their comfort zone and do incredible things. And one thing about traveling is that it extrapolates towards your life, and you can take those lessons and use it. So I really just want to inspire people to get on the road, to get adventurous, to step out of their comfort zone and showcase Africa in the ways that has not been done in a lot of mainland media, and just being able to say, this is my experience. Living with dyslexia, she also aims to highlight the advantages of solo travel. Solo road trips from London to Lagos are not unheard of, but Pelumi is set to make history as the first Black female to undertake this remarkable trip. From London, Teniola Oyetayo, Channels Television.
Very inspiring, and that's it on the program for today and for the week. Thank you so much for always being a part of it. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.